Jenny, it made me even sicker than I was at the end of the 1998 season when I was there watching The Last Dance from the inside out as the columnist for the Chicago Tribune. I told Jenny and Shannon on Friday's show that I had made a video that we posted yesterday in which I suspected that Phil Jackson was the real villain of The Last Dance. He called it The Last Dance because it was his last dance, and it should not have been Michael Jeffrey Jordan's last dance. Everybody in Chicago called Phil the Zen Master, but even late in the 98 season, I referred to him in print as the Spin Master. And when I heard what Jenny just referred to at the end of the documentary last night, I fell out of my chair onto the floor. This was a bombshell. This did incriminate Phil Jackson as the real villain, not Jerry Krause, Phil Jackson. I had lengthy one-on-one interviews with both Phil and Jerry late in that season in Chicago. And I walked away from my interview with Phil not trusting him at all in this sort of Svengali hold, this way that he could hypnotize Michael Jordan and get him to do what Phil wanted to do. So we heard the bombshell last night, never been reported, that Jerry Reinsdorf overruled Jerry Krause, his GM, went to Phil after that sixth and what became final championship and said, "Hey, Phil, I want you to come back." After Jerry Krause had opened the season by telling the media Phil could go 82-0 and he ain't coming back, the owner, thank you gods, came to his senses, overruled the GM and said, "Phil, you've got to come back." And Phil said, "No, I'm done, Jerry Reinsdorf. I need some time away." So I told you, Shannon, on Friday that even though Phil kept saying all along that trail in the playoffs, Michael's had enough. He's burned out. His tank is empty. He needs to walk away now. When I asked Michael about that quote from Phil, I asked him this one-on-one, he rather coldly answered, "That's Phil's opinion." And I thought, okay, good. Maybe that means you're going to come to your senses, Michael, and come back without Phil Jackson. So here's what I can't, this is, Shannon, for me, the complete and utter sad, sorry disconnect. Why didn't Michael ever have any dialogue with Jerry Reinsdorf after the season was over? He said last night at the end of The Last Dance, Michael Jordan said, "We had no dialogue." Why did he fall for Phil Jackson's spin master ploy that let's have a grieving ritual. Let's all come together at the end as a team, and let's all write down our thoughts about how much we loved each other. Michael even wrote, they said, a poem. Let's read it to each other in a circle, and then let's throw it into a trash can and light it on fire and burn it so we can all grieve it and let it go. What are you talking about? Let what go? I'm convinced Phil Jackson already had some kind of handshake deal with the Lakers. There was already Shaq and very young Kobe, and Phil took 1 year off, and then suddenly he was back in business, back right in the saddle, coaching Shaq and Kobe to 3 straight championships in Los Angeles, while Michael Jordan sat out the final 3 years of his prime, ages 35, 36, and 37. Why, Michael, didn't you wake up and go to Reinsdorf and say, you know, the truth is we don't need Phil. We saw it again and again in this documentary. The motivator for this team, really the ultimate head coach of this team, wasn't Phil Jackson. It was Michael Jordan. So all that baloney about Krause having fallen in love with Tim Floyd at Iowa State, forget it. Why couldn't Michael have gone to Reinsdorf and said, hey, Jerry, let's go get a real coach, somebody with experience. Let's go back to Doug Collins. That was his coach, obviously, for 3 years pre-Phil Jackson. And obviously, Michael ended up taking Doug Collins with him to Washington in the end. Why not do that? And so Michael is saying, it's maddening we didn't get a chance to run it back. Well, it's maddening because you didn't seize the opportunity to say, this Phil Jackson stuff's a bunch of phony baloney, a bunch of hocus pocus. But no, he had some weird kind of hold, and Michael talked about it at the end. He could get you to believe just anything. He could pull you into just about anything when it would involve the team. Well, why? That team, as Michael said, would have all come back if Michael said, I'm coming back. I believe Scotty, everybody would have come back on one-year deals. That team was not too old. The Knicks won the East the next year without Patrick Ewing. My Spurs won the shortened season. It was a lockout season championship, and that was pre-Tony Parker, pre-Manu, obviously Kawhi Leonard. They would have won again. I think they would have won 2 championships. And in the end, it left me sickened and saddened that Michael's own documentary actually unwittingly exposed Michael as being naive to this whole situation, Shannon. And he got spun by the spin master and spun right out of town into retirement.
Skip, I can understand why you and others that were so infatuated with the Bulls, and although you covered, you have a soft spot in your heart for Michael Jordan and the Bulls. But I don't believe one word that Jerry Reinsdorf said. You know why? Because this is the New England Patriots situation. If Coach Belichick and Mr. Kraft had wanted Tom Brady back, why did you sign him? Why did you only give him $8 million? Why not give him an extension of 2 to 3 years? When you took your butt to Montana and you talked to Phil and said, Phil, come back for 1 year, why did you only offer him a 1-year deal? If you really wanted him back, why not give him a 2? Why not give him a 3-year deal? Skip, Phil Jackson knew he was not sticking around for a rebuild. Jerry Krause also said, Steve Kerr, Ron Harper, and others, their market value wasn't worth that to us. He was not bringing them back, and they were not coming back on a 1-year deal. That's very convenient for Michael Jordan to say, yeah, they'd come back on a 1-year deal. That's easy for you to say because you're making $36 million on a 1-year deal. You're making $40 million a year from Nike on that 1-year deal. But hold on. What about these other guys? Scottie Pippen had been vastly underpaid for the last 6 years. Scottie Pippen was not coming back on a 1-year deal. Scottie Pippen had been underpaid for such a long time. Scottie needed to get paid. At that point in time, Skip, once you win 1, 2, 3 rings, what's the 4th one? There are only 2 people another ring would have really helped. And it would only help one guy, Scottie Pippen, if he won Finals MVP. Everybody else did nothing to gain. Was that going to get Steve Kerr in the Hall of Fame? Is that the reason why Steve Kerr got a head coaching job? Ron Harper, Tony Kukoc, Luke Longley, was any of those guys going to get in the Hall of Fame if they got a 4th ring? Absolutely not. So therefore, at that point in time, and we see it a lot with football players, after I win 1 or 2 rings, there's no sense in me standing around for a 3rd. Let me go get that big payday, secure my family for perpetuity, and make generations well off. So, Skip, for me, Jerry Reinsdorf, that's very convenient because he knew Phil Jackson was not going to come part of a rebuild. And Jackie Mack said in the first series, she noticed Tim Floyd hanging around 96, 97. What the hell is another coach hanging around your team for in 96 and 97, Skip? Jerry Reinsdorf knows how this comes off. For 20 years, Skip, before this documentary came out, everybody painted Jerry Krause as the villain. Jerry Krause broke it up. Jerry Krause broke it up. But as we started delving into it and got a little deeper, we realized Jerry Krause didn't own the team. Jerry Krause did Jerry Reinsdorf bidding for him. Jerry Reinsdorf, when he went to Montana and signed Phil Jackson for that 1-year deal, he could say, Phil, we're going to keep this thing together for at the bare minimum 2 years. 2 years, that's what we're going to do. But he didn't do that. He let Jerry Krause all year long. He could go 82-0. This thing is not coming back. Not one time did Jerry Krause say, hold on, wait a minute now. We haven't made the final decision. Why would he even allow Jerry Krause to say that? He could have said, look, we're going to reevaluate this thing after the season. This is a big season for us. It'll be the second of our three-peats, and everybody's going to be, I'm sure, going to be exhausted. But we'll cross that bridge once we get to it. Jerry Reinsdorf never once in the entire 98 season said, hold on, guys, wait a minute. We're going to see how this thing plays out, and then we'll circle back and get back to you at a later date and time. Skip, he was not going to re-sign Scotty. Scotty was not going to sign a one-year deal after being 5 years underpaid. And Skip, that's the same thing what we're seeing with Dak. $33 million is a lot of money for 1 year, no question. But Dak says, I want 4 years. I want 5 years. So why would I accept a 1 year deal when I need a 4 or 5 year deal? And so that's what you're asking these guys to do. Give up market value, 3, 4 year deals to take a 1 year deal for another ring. Another ring is not going to change my life. But $5, $6, $7 million a year compared to a $3 million, nah, Skip. So I do not believe a word Jerry Reinsdorf is saying. I believe, Skip, this is wishful thinking. I think he's having buyer's remorse. I guess you can't have seller's remorse. He sold something, Skip, that he wants now. No, bro. And realizing, Skip, Jerry Krause did convince him, oh, I can rebuild this thing. Oh, it's because, Skip, remember, it was organizations. Organizations win titles, not players. It's organizations. And he convinced Jerry Reinsdorf, Jerry Krause, the general manager, I can rebuild this thing. And guess what? They've been picking in the lottery ever since. So I do not believe Jerry Reinsdorf. I do not believe they were bringing this thing back because they could have nipped that in the bud by giving him a 2 or 3 year extension when he took his butt to Montana to begin with.
There's nothing not to believe, Shannon. He said it, and Phil corroborated it last night in the documentary. We know that Jerry Reinsdorf said, I came to my senses after they won 6 in a row, because as he said in episode 1, Jerry Reinsdorf,